Hello.
Hello,
Hello.
people.
uh, is anyone gonna join us? Oh.
Brandon is away.
Good.
Will said good morning earlier.
Yeah.
Hans wasn't going to be here.
Hans
Who knows
or
about
George is
George?
offline. Oh. Yeah. Hi, Brandon.
Morning. What?
We're just mostly amused because it was just me and Ant for a while. We're like, is
I had to
anyone
grab
is anyone gonna show up?
I had to grab my headphones.
That's fair. Maybe George died again.
Distinct possibility.
Or he's running from wherever he was to try and make it back to his room in time. Morning, Will.
I hope he's okay.
Morning.
Cool. Let's get started. How's everyone doing?
Fine.
Who wants
Yeah.
to go first?
Sorry,
You're cool.
I'm an idiot. I was like looking at the clock and thinking, why hasn't Discord gone off? And then I realized Discord wasn't open.
I actually literally did the same thing.
Nice.
Whoops.
So who wants to go first?
Sure. I can go first.
Don't sound too excited.
So yesterday, I cleared out our inbox of all of the emails asking for Steam keys. Went through them, gave some reviewers and streamers some keys, and then made sure that we didn't get scam botted by the rest. And then I spent most of the rest of the time just doing design work for the factions and prep for some of the conversations today. What else did I do yesterday?
Planning.
Reviewed Hans's ads for Facebook before they launched. I think that's what I did yesterday. No, that's what I did yesterday. Oh, planning. That's right. You said planning. So today I need to edit the week 41 video so that we can post something tomorrow. While I'm doing that, I think I might as well just do the week 42 video and get that out of the way. Have a marketing check-in to determine next steps post Facebook ads. Like, are we going to continue to go hunting for Twitch streamers and stuff like that and be more proactive about it and have that discussion? We have a design time that I'm assuming we're bumping up earlier instead of 2 to 3 so that George can participate.
That'd be great.
All right.
I was assuming it would just. I'm assuming that all those recurring design times are actually just right after stand up.
Yeah. Cool. Same. So do that and then figure out what needs to get done post that. So half of my day will be video editing. And yeah. All right. Ant. I had a one-on-one with Ant.
Yeah. We did planning yesterday. I had a one-on-one with Brandon. I went through and checked what was left on just design stuff, getting prepped for design time today. Make sure documents were there, and we could talk about all the pieces that I'm championing. I think that was most of the day. Yeah, the one-on-one, and then I was out in the afternoon with errands in Game Store. So yeah, it was a lot of looking at documents, organizing documents, and talking yesterday. Carl,
Did you want to say what you're doing today?
whatever comes out of design time will probably be a key thing that matters. What we decide from there.
Sure. yesterday. Was planning, had some follow-up conversations with Hans and Brandon about various topics, and then launched the Facebook ads, which one of them went up super quick, one of them still in review, and the other one took a long time but is now active. So I don't know what's going on with them, but I'll keep an eye on them. I'm starting to get the flood of notifications as people interact with them. So that's always fun. Today is I have some meetings offsite with a couple folks, so I'll be in and out of things today as they happen. I think I have one at noon and then one at 2 something. And so might miss the marketing check-in because I might be on the road. But it sounds like it'll be a fast one, so we can potentially play around with the timing of it. Also, want to work on a vision doc with Anthony at some point, just around like how we do releases and content and all that
Yep.
kind of stuff that we talked about doing yesterday. And then I've been working on the side with Sam and some couple friends on just like a vague press, or not a vague, but like a press release for the launch of this stuff, just to see if we can get some random pickup. And so hopefully get that out to the one place you send it to, apparently. So I'll do that. Will.
Sorry, I'm just reading on our community page someone complaining about not being able to get past Jump 2 and asking for tips on doing it. How do people get so bummed after only 3 to 4 days of space travel? That is a really funny line.
I love that one.
Yeah. Sorry. What am I doing? What did I do? Yesterday, I did very little. Yeah, very little. After we did our stand-up, I went through all the docs, made sure that I read through them, made sure that I had read through them already. I think I had read through all of them, but I reread all of them to make sure I was ready for today. And then I looked at some of the bug work that I was already working on that's mostly done. But I think we're still not committing anything, so I haven't committed. And then I wasn't really sure what to do, so I didn't really get a lot done. That's me. Has someone not gone? I think George hasn't. George!
That's correct. So yesterday was planning and excuse me, work on. I just lost my page. Getting the scanning abilities. You know, the little targeting things that are on the planets. Trying to get that to work without crashing. And so once that's fixed, I can put that back in. Then I'll be working next on drag and drop stuff, and then I'd also like to get at least one of my 2 design times that I definitely want to be a part of done today. Actually, there's 4 that I want to be a part of now that I'm thinking about it. So it doesn't matter whether I'm the champion or not. I'd like to get at least 1 or 2 of them out of the way today if we can. Pretty soon after stand up. And then that work will generate more work as well.
Cool. That's everyone. Will, did you have anything you wanted to say about doing today?
Well, I'm still blocked by not being able to commit. So I won't be doing any coding work until we have our Perforce in line. And otherwise, I'm hoping to be part of design time and hopefully contribute something there.
And Hans is out most of today, which exacerbates the blocked issue. But hopefully he'll have some time, maybe tonight, to just do some quick labeling or something, or maybe we can figure out at least how to do something.
I mean, I can
that stuff.
branch.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe Ant and I can get together and just do a temporary solution.
I can just branch the current state of the depot off to a different thing, and then we can continue checking in. It's not.
You think that's what he wanted?
I don't know, but I also don't think it would be a harmful thing right now.
Yeah, good call.
So yeah, why don't we just do that?
That'd be
Add
great.
that to your thing. Oh, I already stopped editing. Cool. So was it just one thing? Fuck, I keep forgetting stuff. One thing we didn't decide yesterday that we had talked about in our retro wanting to decide is who is this week's bug czar, who will be doing all the triaging and bug prioritization stuff. So who wants to do that?
Me, I'm only the champion of a single card, so I think it makes sense that I should do it.
Great. So I am going to name you Bugzar, and we are going to track Bugzar by putting you on the 30% bug anchor.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I'll go through the bugs this afternoon then and make sure they're ordered and shit.
Yep. And just remember we had set up that Sev stuff, so if you want to start fucking around with labeling things or however we want to do the Sev stuff.
We don't have labels yet, right?
No, and I don't know if we need to do labels or just put like a 0, 1, or 2 at the front of a bug or something when you're doing it, because we already have like a billion labels. But I don't know. However,
0's high, 2 is low, right?
Yes.
Cool.
0 is the drop everything. 1 is the do it soon. 2 is the someday. Some sprint we will do that. Cool. Was that the only thing? I swear I remembered something else I forgot to talk about yesterday. I don't know. I'm sure I will remember later and be very frustrated with myself. It'll be great. Cool. Did we want to do any playtesting? Or did we just want to jump right into design times?
My vote is design time.
I agree.
Yeah, we have a lot of those to do.
Cool. That's fine by me. Do we want to just leave the stream up and do it? Since that means I'm recording
We can do
anyway.
That works for me.
Sure.
I thought
Where
we
you
were
guys?
streaming design time so that we could make videos out of them later.
I mean we can do both. One does not
Okay.
preclude the other.
Julio Benito.
Sweet. So which design time are we doing?
Let's see. Okay, we have. Here's the ones we have: action panel discussion, galaxy generation, resources,
Other resource
and
stuff.
morale, power, food, and fuel.
Yeah, which is
So
tied to
that's-
resources. And then if we have anything to do with factions. Did we lose you, George?
No, I thought
You
I
s-
lost for a second, but
You seem kind of.
uh,
You're a little bit. Your video was weird. But
yeah, I was making a face too because I was getting upset at the sound coming in and out just briefly. But I'm back.
All right.
What is the other?
Sounds like we should start with the resource one because it unblocks most everything.
That
else.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
So, does everyone have Trello open to open the resources design doc?
Looking for it. Design time action.
It's the one with like those lists
Rare
of things,
quality?
like where you got.
Resources design notes.
There it is.
No,
Got
it's
it.
called resources. It's just called resources.
Yeah,
there's stuff-
it's resource design notes, and then when you link through it, it becomes just resources.
Okay, cool.
Oh yeah. In the ticket, it's called resource design. Sorry about that.
So I believe Carl, you wrote up the top part there.
Probably. It's
I think this was something that you wrote originally.
yes, I think so. Do you want me to talk about it? Or
Yeah. Why don't you? Since yes, it was you. You wrote it on the 28th.
that was so long ago. I don't have memory of back then.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, I know what you mean.
we've been
Maybe-
working on this game for 15 weeks, otherwise known as 10 years. Um, all right. So the goal was we have sort of the gameplay we have now has very coarse resource buckets, and I actually kind of like that for a variety of reasons. But the goal was to really try and like how can we add more details to this that we can either play around with from more of a simulation based stuff or from micro or finding rares, or like how do you make finding metal exciting without just adding sort of random extra resources that potentially become a problem where we then suddenly have to make some weird inventory management screen or something. And so thinking through it, for some of it, I changed it to bring in some of the stuff we had talked about originally, where we changed food to more of a life support bucket, and then keep metal, gas, and fuel. And fuel is basically a special thing. It just sort of sits on the side and doesn't have underscoring types. But then under each of those buckets, you have a bunch of detail stuff, which is what Ant started adding, where there's a bunch of different kinds of metal and a bunch of different kinds of gas that you can find in various things. And then sort of having the idea of like, hey, we can have these sort of details around this stuff that ends up having effects throughout the system, right? So it's having metals that can have different keywords, and depending on how you use different metals in different places, those keywords come into effect. I was thinking specifically originally around just some base stuff, right? Like if you use a delicate metal for repairs or something, that's probably not going to work out so well for you. But if you use it for sensor components or something, that could have keywords that boosts those in some way. You also having interactions with factions, right? Like we have factions that think that using high-tech stuff is bad, and so they hate if you use, refined metals versus using raw metals or something like that. And so having those different keywords lets us basically have other events and other factions key off of those things, and then lets you sort of play with that stuff. And I think separately from that, we can still have a bucket of sort of special resources that are created by events or specific things, but they would sit sort of outside of this whole sort of quality component stuff. And that was the original idea, and I think I sort of hand wave some stuff, and then Ant can take over because I think he took it and went farther.
So then I went and started thinking through if we're going this way out. One thing, I just think we need more depth to our resource system to do more interesting things going forward. But I don't want to get so crazy detailed where I care about the elements and resources. I don't care that it's CO2. I don't care that it's oxygen. I don't care it's nickel and iron and titanium. We could go crazy there, and that's too far down. So I like Carl's thing of these different types, like metals, constructive, decorative. I added radiated, which there could be a number of these. That's why there's question marks in this thing of just being like, oh, there could be more. But I did add to a couple more chunks other than metal and gas, like liquids, organics, and synthetic. Synthetic being stuff that you actually create, which would be electronics, polymers, plastics. That is a second tier of resources that take the base resources, and you have something in your fleet that can produce these other resources. To get us a little bit farther there, and you kind of have to manage more, think through the process of where you're putting the base resources. But then that led me to start thinking of okay, this ties into the other document of I would like more ways that food is produced or more ways that morale can be gained. Like all these different base things can be modified, so it's not just build a hydroponics. There's different types of things that make food. Hydroponics is a great example here because hydroponics maybe is a really high tier costly but very good for your fleet way to generate food, but it
And it
needs
soaks
potable
water.
liquid and gas, breathable gas, unbreathable gas, or honestly any gas, whatever. But it outputs more than just food, consumable food, organics, and breathable gas, because it's plants living there. But you could also have. I found stuff online just looking through Real Science. Algae farms for food. Like this is totally a thing that they're gonna, and it's literally just needs some type of liquid, doesn't matter, produces algae that you can scrape for sludge and eat. It's high. This is a real thing that some scientists were considering as an easy way to feed long-term space travel.
Costs morale.
Yeah, no, like that's a total thing that
Yeah,
it's just
well-
like this could affect things of like, yeah, this feed your fleet, but people aren't thrilled with eating the sludge.
Yeah, I was gonna say instead of costing morale, I think the difference should be you don't gain morale when
Yeah.
people are eating this stuff, but if they eat better food, then you gain morale.
Yeah, and like that's one of the things that like so one of these things is where putting stuff into these kind of resource buckets opens up the ability to have more varied installations that do different things, that take different resources, and give us more flexibility with that system and intertwining different installations and abilities. So yeah, just at the bottom, I just wrote out quick examples.
So a couple of these things, I feel like they're split up in really good ways, and a couple of them, or really clear gameplay ways, and a couple of them feel like they're just almost aesthetic differences. And I kind of feel like I really like when we do, like for instance, under metal, construction and decorative are awesome. And the reason why I say they're awesome is it's very clear what you're going to be using them for in the game from a gameplay perspective. Not even saying that we're going to call them constructive and decorative, right?
Yeah.
But just from a systems perspective, that makes a lot of sense. Radiated, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have radiated metal, but just as an example, on the first glance, I don't understand what that's supposed to mean. And my guess is that it means it's for like scientific purposes, like maybe resource conversions or research.
I hadn't put it here. It's in, I think, the Vision doc. I had an example, a thought of different reactor types. So an actual like fission reactor where you need to pump in radiated
got it. Okay.
metals
That
to
makes
power
sense.
the nuclear reactor of your ship.
Yep.
And it could be used for science stuff and things like that. I wanted to like, these are just thoughts. My thought would probably be there would be, to start with, just two or three basically in each category and see what we build out from there.
I also think, just from a humanity perspective, we should just call breathable gas oxygen and potable liquid water. Like that should be the names of them. It should be oxygen and water, in my opinion. I get that there's lots of potable liquids. It could be anything from
Honestly,
apple juice to
I would
you know.
agree. I would agree there. I mean, we are basing that we are all the fleet, no matter what each thing right now is human based, and we can relate to the fact that humans need to drink water. We can't. Well, we could drink Brondo.
What is that?
It's what plants crave.
Let's crave.
It's a movie reference. Don't worry
It's
about
an
it.
idiocracy.
Okay.
Hey, we could have had the synthetic potable liquid plant that produces.
So yeah, because I think the word water under liquid already encompasses water and anything that gives you water. Like, you drink a juice, mostly you're getting water and some nutrients, right?
Mhm.
Like some sugar, some other stuff, but it's mostly water. And oxygen is the only thing we breathe. So
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. I mean, it's clear.
I'm
yeah,
not sure
some of
why
the
we have poisonous gas. What is poisonous gas for?
It was basically thinking of CO2 or methane,
Chlorine.
things that like would be put like CO2.
Oh, sorry. I can think of examples of poisonous gases.
Yeah.
What I mean is from a gameplay perspective, what does it do? Like, why does poisonous what
Medical.
does that indicate from our games? Medical. Okay.
It could
medical?
it could also be for containment. It could also be for like a lot of
What do you mean containment?
for reactor stuff.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, okay.
you know, like I think it's basically
Or actually, that's the thing with maybe there's a food thing like the hydroponics once. I guess I put unbreathable there. It's probably more not poisonous, unbreathable. Likely more than poisonous. I just had written it differently, but that was the whole thing. Like hydroponics needs unbreathable gas, CO2, for the plants, and it produces breathable.
I kind of feel like we can just say gas is oxygen and other. 'Cause it's like really the only distinction we need to make is whether you can breathe it or whether you can use it for other things, right?
I feel like that is dropping the ability to have more keywords on the ground. Because sure, but also I think that there's differences between like noble gases that are non-reactive and are useful because they're non-reactive with basically everything, versus things like chlorine, which is actually really bad in certain cases, but have very specific uses like medical. Because then you can base events and stuff
Okay.
on like, hey, yeah, you use chlorine and that's normally good, but now there's an event and there's a chlorine leak, which is really bad, right? Like now you're
Yeah,
losing folks because you
okay.
used a poison gas, right? Especially when you look at when we start going broader than just resource cases, like if there are factions that are like, why the fuck do you have poisonous gas on a spaceship where we on fragile tubes in a vacuum? Like we should not have poisonous gas at all. And the marketing. So
how
like,
about
yeah.
I really like when you said reactive. I feel like okay, all gases except for oxygen are not breathable for us as humans. We just can't breathe them. So why don't we call it oxygen, reactive, and non-reactive?
Could we maybe talk about how these are going to affect gameplay rather than theme, or is that
Well,
not going
this
to be
is
a useful
exactly why.
transition?
This is exactly why I'm talking about that. Because reactive and non-reactive gases are the things that affect gameplay. So we know that oxygen is the thing that is needed for your people. That's a gameplay element, right? Reactive gases are things that would cause events that are bad for you, or I don't know what the word is, but and then non-reactive, it would be like you have 3 tiers of gases. The first tier is just oxygen. You use it to breathe. It's the most important. The second one is non-reactive gases. They're like things you can't breathe, but they don't do bad stuff to you, and they probably cost a lot of them to convert them into other resources. And then the last one is going to be whatever reactive or even you could even call it like oxygen, gas, and dangerous gas or something like that, or I don't know what the word is.
Sorry, to
But
Will's point, I guess I really don't care about the naming conventions
Yeah, I don't
yet.
either.
I also don't care about the theming of those elements yet. I mean, like
I'm not talking about
on an
theme.
action by action basis, when I'm spending these resources, what does this even look like? Am I like
Like-
now submitting different like I'm so I guess let me just take the cost of refining fuel. It says it costs 40 gas. Am I going to be able to submit different qualities of gas and then the output is different based on my input? Or
Yes.
another example is like when I'm building hydroponics, am I going to be able to choose? I guess am I going to see like a range of different, kinds of food
Well,
production?
I would want to step back one step further, which is like, how do we, like, what is this player experience like? Like, I scanned a planet, I see that I have radiated metal on it. Do I care about that? Is that a thing that I'm excited about immediately? And what is the thing that makes me excited about that immediately? And then after I've gotten it, what is the thing that cues me into there's a way to use this that's cool? And then what is that thing that's cool? And I feel like if we can get all of those strings together, then we can work backwards from that and say, yeah, reactive is the thing that drives that whole process forward. We need our gas to be called
Right.
reactive.
Right. So from some of the original ideas that I had what I was envisioning was that the base level of installations, if we consider the installations we have now, basically your basic installations, level 1 basic installations basically will just take whatever and convert it into what you need. So the fuel refinery just takes literally any kind of gas you want, and eventually converts it into fuel through various processes. When you start looking at level 2s and level 3s, you start looking more towards potential ways to specialize, and having different subcomponent of qualities allows you to specialize and get bigger bonuses, right? So like level 2 fuel factory would need higher quality gas and gets you certain kinds of fuel, or gets you better fuel, or gets, and like you could be like, oh, if I have this kind of higher quality gas, I can just get more fuel, or I get more, it has a better conversion rate, or this, but if I specialize in this other kind of thing, then it actually has 2 outputs. It gives me fuel and this other thing that I need to feed this other sort of interconnected system.
So like what that might be like as a player is like kind of like Don't Starve, where like you would click the upgrade button and you'd see all of the different types of reactors that you could upgrade to, and you'd be mousing over them and you'd be like, oh, there's a thing called combustible gas, I should try and get that.
Yes.
And you get excited about the idea of building that type of reactor.
Yeah, and you get excited about, you start seeing flows. This is the sort of resource conversion flow stuff. Like, you get excited because you're like, oh, this reactor gives me exactly what I need, but it also gives me, if I do this one, it gives me fuel and something else, and I know that I have a hydroponics that if I have that something else, then I get like double the food, and it gives me this other thing that if I have the upgraded scanners, then it takes the output from those 2 things, and like I can do even more. Like, I sort of want to see the interconnected chain there, with the added layer on top where you're like, but if I do all of that stuff, then Apex Division is going to hate me. So how do I want to manage that?
How do I know those things? I mean, the one that seems obvious to me is knowing the upgrade path. Like, I can click upgrade and I can see the different routes, and I can get excited about trying to progress on those routes. How do I get excited about like reactive gas going into a scanner? Like, how is that a thing that I know about, that I'm excited about when I get it, and that it's a thing that I try and accomplish?
Because I think it's the same thing. When you're looking at scanners and potential upgrade paths for scanners, you're like, oh, if I have the LiDAR, if I can upgrade to the LiDAR scanner, it's going to start costing me combustible gas to use it, but it, scans me 3 different things, right? Like, so the idea is that multiple installation, so both on build and on upgrade, you start to see more options, and you start to see the keywords, right? Like, the idea here is to really to get back to a few keywords on this stuff, so that you can say like, oh, I see combustible gas in a bunch of places. What is the combo across the fleet of combustible gas, and can I find enough combustible gas on this run, right? And then also, like, in Apex Division or whatever, they'd say, we hate combustible gas, or we love combustible gas because we're the military. I forget what Apex Division is.
Yeah.
And so you're like, cool, here's the pros and cons of a combustible gas run. And actually, my starting system had a whole shit ton of combustible gas, so I should probably figure out what the fuck to do with it. Like, I can just throw it in my fuel factory as just normal gas at level 1 fuel refinery, but it's just not going to be, it's like all that level 1 stuff is acceptable, but not highly efficient.
So there is a type of each of these resources that is boring, and that is the one that's used by default when it doesn't call for a specific type. Mm-hmm. Then there are types of these resources that are exciting, that get used if you don't have the basic one for the default stuff. Like, as a player, if I'm constructing a level 1 thing and I have run out of boring metal, it's going to start using my radiated metal. Is that right?
I believe that.
I don't think I would want it. I wouldn't want it to use my radiated metal unless I specifically tell it to.
So then,
and also, I think it's probably best just to keep the separation from a clarity perspective for players.
Because I think if we separate them, then they aren't a sub resource. They're just a completely different resource.
I agree with that.
Yeah, the goal was to make them sub-resources so that base level stuff doesn't require you to specialize, and it doesn't matter what goes into it, right? Like, if you create something and it just requires base metal, right? Like, it doesn't specify a type, it just needs metal. It can take any kind of metal, and we may even, for that base level of stuff, strip out keywords that end up associated with it, right? Because the goal here is like, this is a place where people can opt into the complexity, or if you're fine with pretty inefficient stuff and like you're at the beginning of the game, you're not obviously punished for not knowing all the specialized stuff, right? Like if you're building all the level 1 stuff and you just have a bunch of metal sitting around, you can just make it versus saying like, oh no, you have to find titanium now and this can only be made with titanium, right? Like you sort of
Okay, but imagine my reserves are only titanium and radiated,
right.
and I want to build a level 1 thing.
It doesn't matter because it's all metal.
But it is going to matter a little bit, right? Because you're going to expect the player to choose whether they want to use their titanium or their radiated metal to do this thing, to build a level 1 installation, because it's going to be consuming that as a basic resource. So you're still going to need to make the player make a choice about something that they probably don't know about, which isn't the end of the world. I just want to make sure we're on the same page about what that means.
So sure, I feel you. I think that from a vision standpoint, my goal was to make it where we do not force that choice until it's explicit, right? So if you want to build something that costs metal, it's just going to take some of your metal, right? And it'll probably take from the lowest quality first and then work your way up as you go. And then outside of that, then you can opt into, now I want to upgrade it. Do I want to keep upgrading it on this boring path that just takes whatever metal I have and sort of gives me a generic output? Or do I want to say, ooh, let's go into the radiated version, which requires specifically this radiated resource, so now I need to care about it, and adopts keywords and stuff, right?
So then it seems like the keywords, following up from what you just said, are clearly gradiated, which I think seems like a good idea. We've got a level 1 metal,
your
a level
whites,
2 metal,
your whites, your
level 3 metal.
greens,
Yeah.
your blues, and your purples.
And we take from the lowest quality when we're automatically picking. Cool. I like that. That's really easy to do with metal. That's like gold, silver, bronze, platinum.
We can have fun with the tooltips on this. Like we don't have to. That's one of the things. It's like we can flavor what the things are. Like, oh, these are your rare metals, and which are your golds. And
I want a gold reactor.
And yes, this is adding more complexity to the game, but the game needs more complexity in this way.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it adding complexity. I'm just trying to understand, like, how does a player think about these things? How does it create goals for them that they get excited about and pursue?
If it's a clean gradient, like if it's cleanly gradiated by rarity, then I think it's a lot easier for us to like systemically build it up from there. But I get worried when we start talking about deep theming around CO2 versus oxygen versus chlorine.
Yeah, I don't want to go
scenarios,
that
'cause
far.
It's like, yeah, it's like I don't think
Chlorine and CO2 are both
listed as unbreathable. Like,
I
as
think
long as it's
I think doing inventory management around clearly gradiated keywords is clearly gradiated and keywords, right? I think is super easy to do. And then from a flavor perspective, when you scan a planet, we should have the flavor of, hey, this planet has a bunch of lithium or argon gas, but it's argon gas, but like in parentheses, in big, bold, colorful letters, it's quality to non-reactive or whatever, right? And so it just goes into that bucket.
Purple.
Yeah.
Like Ant said.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it just goes into that
Or some
bucket.
color.
It just goes into that bucket, right? And you don't have to worry about it from a gameplay perspective. But from a thematic perspective, we can have all the periodic table stuff and map them so players can be like, ooh, cool, I found gold, which is just a green metal.
It's decorative metal. Cool.
Yep.
But I think it's
Map
also
colors.
really important. I think it's really important to distinguish the resources that, regardless of their rarity, are required for human life. Did I say metals? Sorry. No, I said resources, didn't I?
Yeah, which is
Like, I think that's an important call out, though, compared to even the rarity. Like, it doesn't matter how rare they are. It's just
right,
there are
which
certain things you have.
which is why I think they go more into the life support bucket than they go into the other buckets. right? Like,
Yeah, totally.
oxygen and water and food, like edible food, should be in the life support bucket, not in the other categories.
I think that's awesome. I think it'd be great if we get rid of, if we just say like, okay, liquids. If you have common liquids and rare liquids or whatever we're picking for those things, you can just convert common liquid into water. Like we can hand wave that technology. It's not like we have to have them build a specific converter or whatever, right?
So, get rid of water.
Agreed.
And maybe you
I
can't
think,
do it with the
agreed.
other ones.
That's
yeah,
fine.
I think that's I think we should be able to do that with every resource.
Mhm.
We should be able to use it as its basic type.
Yep.
Like we just have the underlying assumption that the life support resources are the lowest form of a resource. Like this is how they got
Oh,
in this
that's
space
so-
in the first place.
It's so jank. It's like they're the most important ones.
Yeah, but I
But
mean,
it can
it's
be a set-
also
like by
They're the most
thematic wise,
common too.
you should be able, like, it's a fleet fling a planet, like knowing that they're going to be in a space
Yeah.
journey. They should have thought through the fact that they need to be able to at least produce this stuff from a
Yeah.
wide range of things.
And I think you highlight the importance of them by making them their own category, right? Like, so thematically they're obviously important because it's its own category, but because they're needed for survival, they should be pretty plentiful and common.
yeah. I mean, they're straight up clocks, so like they need to be pretty obvious.
To
Yep.
move that one step further, I think we should be able to convert all level resources to a lower level. Then we never have to worry about running out of a resource that we care about. We never have to provide a decision to the player. You know, if you have a lot of gold, but you just spent all of your silver building a level 2 upgrade or something, and the level 3 upgrade requires 20 gold and 20 silver, you should be able to convert that gold into silver. If you can't, then the player might have chosen to distribute those resources differently when they were upgrading.
Mhm.
And we should, I mean, if we're going to make that choice automatically for the player, we should reduce their ability to cause pain to themselves by doing that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we should do that. The asterisk being, I do think that we should make it clear that they'll be spending 40 gold instead of 20 gold and 20 silver, just in case they want to be like, oh, I want to hold off on this upgrade until I can find the silver because gold is
yeah.
more important to me. Like, you want to highlight that it will happen, because there will be a feeling of loss there potentially. But if they're just like, I don't care, I have so much gold, just like use it all, right? Like, that's great, that's fine.
Go.
The only other one on here was, does anyone have these would not, I kind of feel like the synthetic ones aren't graded. They're kind of more just rare things. Like, they don't convert around. You've converted to have, I have X electronics, I have X polymers. Like,
Yeah, I think it's important.
and there
to
are
distinguish
certain
between
upgrade
findable
paths
and
that
not
are just
findable.
like, maybe upgrade 3 of such thing needs polymer components as well. Like, then you just have to have them.
Yeah.
There's no conversion around it. These are rare, effectively self-crafted tier 2 resources, not outside the rarity curve, kind of. You're not.
Go.
Yeah.
So
You're
we
not
should
finding
display
finding
them
these.
differently.
Yeah.
We can have like at least one specialty resource per group. It's like you're trying to think of.
Well, yeah. I was just calling. They're just called synthetics, and like you can say,
Sure.
like,
Yeah. That's cool.
and you have to do that. Make your fleet have the stuff to be able to produce those.
Yeah.
So when do I get to make androids?
I mean, that's electronics, some polymers.
You discover them, AI robot farmers. We have.
Oh, yeah, I
from the
forgot
AI
about that.
farmers.
Yeah, you discover
like,
that.
And maybe it gives you the ability to start producing AI farmers.
You start discovering cool things in our, otherwise dead and boring universe.
Wow, shit thrown.
I mean, what? There's literally nothing in our universe, so we gotta, like, it's a thing we need to do.
You got to put things in there with your own dirty hands.
I mean, I'm gonna try my best.
So, trying to get from what I've decided then to go over it is resource buckets that are
we can change these, which would be like metal and gas, life support, synthetics. Would liquids still be there in another bucket?
I don't really have a strong preference.
Yeah, I don't really either.
I mean, I guess
actually I do. I would like less.
I would like to pull from the opposite direction personally, where it's like, what are we building? Oh, that thing would probably take water. That kind of a direction. But I'm happy to go either way.
Well,
Whatever
these are
works
just
for you guys.
yeah. I'm just trying to think of the general buckets.
I think liquid seems fine. It's a really relatable, obvious thing.
Yeah.
People will get it. It's a thing in the universe.
And do we have organics at all? Or is that just food?
How
I
much
think
do we expect?
food is an important category, and then I think, yeah, or I guess biomatter, or I don't know.
Yeah, it was organic matter. Bio.
Fuel is a synthetic.
Fuel is a synthetic.
Yeah, it is.
Sure, let's do synthetic and organic so that we can
Okay.
have both sides of that.
I do like the thought of you can find organics that are decaying, and maybe you can do something with decaying organic.
Yeah.
Like your dead people, you can make Soylent. It's great.
Pickle.
Yep.
Pickled people.
Yep. Ferment your
Okay.
people.
Okay. So from here, what needs to be done to get this? What stages for MVP of this?
We should probably.
I mean, we have to finish the full design doc first, right? And get the team to kind of be like, yeah, that's cool.
I would like to start with, since we know like an obvious path for player learning is the upgrade path, that we just create an additional upgrade for every installation that's a better upgrade that requires some of these resources, and
Yeah.
then we implement the resources for that purpose.
We can sub. Yeah, we can totally. We already have subtypes for resources.
Yep.
It's just a string right now that does nothing, but it's there and it's displayed.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's just have like 2 options chained out from each of our base
Upgrades?
installations
all right.
so that we can start to differentiate them. And then, at least start with the thing that's cool and incentivizes people to care.
Is one of us? I know you're the champion, Anthony, so it's fine
Yeah.
if you do this. But is one of us going to be the one doing that work? Like that design doc work, initial. Like who wants to tackle the initial design thing?
Can we do it right now?
We could. Well,
As a champion, I would probably create a separate time if we want to brainstorm through. If we're
Yeah.
if the spec is to make up an upgrade, start with, hey, we're gonna add in these sub resource categories, and then create a couple upgrade options for each base installation that we have. Would probably be a different design time, because I feel like the design time has worked in that we are aligned on a path forward. We don't have the specifics yet, but that's what the design time was for. Just aligning on this. Because I think we have other design time stuff to go over that we want to go
that's
over.
exactly what I was going to say. I
Yeah,
kind of
'cause-
really want to move on to another
yeah.
design time.
I would agree. I think we have a clear path forward, a clear execution set that someone can take ownership of, and then schedule another design time if we want to do the brainstorming side of it.
Yeah. So, I will.
Is that okay, Will?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what do we want to talk about next?
Do we want to talk about power? Or do we want to wait till resources is further down the path to go back to power as an implementation of those resources?
That's a good point. Let's look at the other ones we could talk about too.
I think we should align on that now.
I'd
Because
like to
the
talk about
decision to
power.
go for the latter is important, right?
Yeah.
Like, are we just going to have it be built off of the specialization of resources is important to determine, because it means that we basically like excise that system from the game, or we design a new system in addition to that resource specialization, right?
And I also think the first half of that discussion doesn't rely on sub resources.
Yeah.
No.
And it's the more important half, I think.
And I feel like it's a long-standing pain point for players and us, so we can just. And I think there's even cards in the doing that are about drag and drop and stuff that if we decide to go a different direction with power could just be dropped from the sprint. So
I mean, it's a thing that people are consistently reporting as a bug when it's actually just an experiential issue.
all right, so we did have a doc in the
I can share it out.
Power, it's in the
depth on blah blah blah.
Thank you, Will.
Yep.
What is the power implementation?
So I wrote this one again. It was a get things out of my brain, so I can do the quick overview. Basically, the idea was I think someone else had the idea of just like, hey, let's just make power super easy. Your reactor outputs a certain amount of power. You can't build or upgrade things unless you have power to cover it, right? Like it's just a gate, right? It doesn't have a consumption power. You don't have to micro power. It just either has the power or it doesn't. And if you don't have the power, then you need to upgrade your reactor before you do it. But then I had the idea of like, well, what if you had reactors composed of sort of 3 components that you could individually mess with that would let us bring in more keywords, right? So rather than just going reactor level 1, reactor level 2, reactor level 3, and blah, 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 you could have things where you can change the structure, the containment, or the fuel. And the idea is like, hey, this gives you some more levers to play with to specialize different ships into consuming different resources, and use up things that you have lots of, or switch it around based on what you find, as well as giving more hooks for different factions to have different opinions about it, where the idea is that each of these structures can be upgraded with different quality types, and that would introduce the keywords to the reactors. And then with the fuel, we can find ways to have it where you can opt into paying a larger upfront cost, but never have to worry about fuel again, or opt into, hey, now I'm going to have something that just consumes this fuel on an ongoing basis for a while. So I sort of I introduce myself another clock, but potentially to gain more power out of it, right? Like burning oil gives me more power than solar, but hey, turns out burning oil means I have to keep finding oil, right? And so like having those things would be there. You could also have factional affinity for different materials and fuels, right? Like and sort of going through that stuff and figuring it out. And then also lets us tie into a potential ship manufacturer where if you have a certain ship manufacturer, they always use this kind of reactor as a base default, and so you're sort of set down that path, and so that's another thing that you can sort of discover and be like, oh, okay, this is giving me some recipes for decent reactors that I can sort of learn from and go from. And so it changes the base power system to something pretty simple, where it's just like, I need more power. If I want to build more stuff, I need more power. I just upgrade my reactor, but it makes the reactor upgrades have more choices, and more depth to those choices, was the overall idea. And then I wrote a bunch of words that say all of that even longer.
Yeah.
I'd actually like to advocate for this area to be something we remove like a lot of the tactical complexity, because I think we're about to find that in the resources and the keywords associated with those resources, as well as the installations you can build from there. The elements that I really like from this are tapping into this 3 kind of keyword buckets that we are going to build: factions, resource keywords, and potentially the manufacturers. But I'm assuming that manufacturers and the would be more closely aligned with those other groups than be like a standalone thing at the start, like in the place we're at now. So I think it'd be really cool if we actually helped guide players to look for specific resources at the start of the game by having drafted a ship with a certain reactor that kind of naturally likes building or upgrading in a certain way. So like say you draft a freighter that really likes, fuel refineries. We already kind of define that archetype, that fantasy for that ship. and then you have it, like the keywords of that specific type of gas. I think that kind of strategic nudge for a player can help you players like identify, oh, this thing that I found on a planet connects to this thing, and I get bonuses for it, right? While also, maybe we can still have some of the tactical complexity of, well, if I don't have this resource, or I mean, I don't know, we made the example of like gradiated rarity. It's like, am I really going to spend more of this resource on a ship that likes it, or am I going to wait and save up so I can spend it on another ship and upgrade it this way? I don't know. I was trying to think of something that makes it so that we don't have to like triple tap on the technical complexity of upgrading it down a different path again, while also introducing an element that helps players naturally shape their actions and breadcrumb them into the upgrade system. Did that make any sense?
Yes, at least to me.
I do think
Yeah.
that choosing your fuel seems like a cool tactical choice in that
Yeah.
hierarchy, though.
I like that. One thing from this, beyond like this on how we're upgrading reactors and power, what is Carl mentioned something at the beginning that we talked about. I don't think George has been around for it, of being like there isn't power consumption anymore. A reactor just puts out like 1.21 gigawatts, and guess what? As long as that is higher than what an installation says, hey, I require a power output of at least this much, like you can build it. It doesn't, but it doesn't. There's no consumption going on. There's no managing.
So we're not going to allow building of installations past what your power capacity is, and we're not going to allow
No,
turning them on and off.
because they
Correct.
don't add. They don't add. There's no consumption going on. It's just a gate.
But yeah,
An
but yeah,
installation-
but yes,
an
there's no
installation
turning
not
looks
really
for
in
that your
favor of
output
that.
is at least this much. I do not.
The reason why I'm
Thumbs up from Will.
Yeah, huge fan of this.
Go ahead, George.
I actually just kind of feel like instead of like, I'm actually more of a fan of getting rid of hard points as a system. Let me rephrase that. Getting rid of hard point limits as a system, and having it to be where power just dictates how many hard points you have, and that's just how many things you can
Yeah.
power. Like, you can
I would
just
agree with
have
combining them.
like I like the power system from the perspective of getting to choose what things you're doing, and I don't like being limited by hard points on ships, and so I feel like it solves the same thing whether we do it one way or the other. So I mean, but that's just my opinion. I feel like if everything costs 1 power and you just get a slot when you upgrade your reactor, bam. It doesn't matter what level it is. You just have slots based on number of power. So instead of, the ship defining the number of slots you get, it's the reactor that defines the number of slots you get.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that you lose when you do that is having the differentiation between ships that have a lot of slots and ships that have a few slots.
I think we can keep that if we want to do the specialization of reactors, where it's like, well, freighter normally has, I don't know, like a reactor that likes specialty fuel 1. You normally want to be able to upgrade your fuel refinery on this ship because you don't have a cool reactor, but the freighter does. Therefore, you can upgrade it outside the normal power constraints.
I'm not following you. I'm sorry.
So it's kind of trying to double dip into this reactor likes specific things. So build specific things on this ship. So if we just combine power and hard points together, but you can expand your ship's hard points by upgrading your reactor, we can have specialty reactors naturally produce power for like additional power, or have an additional hard point for the installations that it likes. Sorry, did that make any sense? So like,
So
I feel like you're saying the same thing George is saying, unless I'm misunderstanding it.
I think what he's advocating for is base level reactors set number of hardpoints on a ship. So if you have a level 2 reactor, it sets 2 hardpoints. But specialty fuels and specialty reactors would give you basically free extra hardpoints for specific things. So like a bioreactor of level 2 would give you your 2 hardpoints, but one hydroponics installation does not cost power or a hardpoint. So you basically could build an extra hydroponics than you normally could, and then you normally would have the hardpoints for, because it's a specialty reactor that does that.
Yeah. So
That
it kind
seems
of
overly complicated.
It does sound kind of complicated, but it also sounds kind of cool.
I don't think it sounds complicated. I think it's
sorry.
I think it's going to be really intuitive for players when they can just see, like,
I
there's
should
a
say, to
UX
me, it
experience
sounds
there.
complicated and something I don't want to deal with.
I mean,
Um,
I think my biggest concern is that I do think that if we can layer it correctly, it can be a system that players can learn, and we can help them along with theming. I think that representing it visually is the hard part. Like, when do I have the free hard point? How is it limited in the thing? When does it show up? When does it not? I think that's going to be pretty hard to nail the representation of in a good way.
I think the easy way to do that is you don't ever worry about calling them free hard points. You just call them hard points. By default are universal hard points unless they're listed as a type. When they're listed as a type, they're restricted hard points.
And then you just match color to color. And I mean,
Yep.
if we change the
Or
way that
shape to
we
shape.
have like the installations built out, which we might a little bit, there are the hard points in the ship, or like the power slots on a ship. You would click the bubble. Uncolored bubbles have all of the options available. Specialty bubble that exists on this ship only has that option listed. And then you.
I agree.
And then the idea is I can freely update it because it's
'cause
got a
it's-
free hard point, so I don't worry about the extra energy it takes ever.
Exactly. That's its specialty.
Yeah,
slot.
you're never balancing. You're never worried about how much power an installation takes. It's just slots only.
Or maybe even easier, that slot always comes with the free base 1 of that thing. Like a freighter always comes with a base level 1 fuel factory, and it's in that special slot in addition to its normal power. And then they upgrades
It
from
could
there.
be stuff like, yeah, actually
Well,
that
if it
could be
was-
exactly.
If it was that, then you wouldn't ever have cool upgrade choices for your reactors and stuff, which I thought was the thing you were pitching. Maybe I misunderstood.
Wait, I don't
I
think
don't-
this is excluding that. Like, you can
I don't-
change your reactor however you like, can't you?
But then
So
what
I
happens
think
to
it
that
doesn't
thing?
exclude it, but in most cases, I think that you would prefer. You would not be upgrading it mid-game. You would be more interested in drafting something that naturally comes with the reactor, and it becomes like a strategic decision instead of a tactical decision. And then we can have like flex ships, like you can obviously have your flagship not be specialized at the start of the game. And that might be where you make that kind of tactical decision. It's your flex spot. But I think by and large, we're already going to have a ton of decisions about which way you upgrade a base fuel factory or whatever. I don't think we need more tactical complexity in your upgrade tree at the reactor level, I guess is what I'm advocating for. Or we don't want to have that to be a fleet-wide problem that you want to solve. But yeah. I guess I'm
Yeah,
trying
I
to get
don't-
more strategic decision making up front that helps players just like naturally interact with those systems instead of having it be like an open canvas all the time.
I'm not as much of a fan of that. I feel like there is already enough direction in the strategic choices because you've got a freighter and it has this thing on it. Like, yes, it is true that you could dismantle it and put something else there, but I feel like the game already gives us a lot of direction just by having installations already on ships. I don't feel like there's a huge gain in directionality in the drafting phase from what you're pitching. I think there are other cool things about it, but that one seems minor to me. I guess to me, I think I kind of agree with Ant. It just seems sort of complicated in terms of, not in terms of like necessarily player interaction, but just in terms of edge cases that it creates for us. Stuff like if I wanted to upgrade a reactor so it became a specific type of reactor, and it gives me like an extra spot that can then be filled only by hydroponics, then like we have to visualize that. And then what if I upgrade it again into a different direction? Or can I just not do that? Like what happens to the
Yeah, one of my
installation in
goals
that
with
case?
whole thing with the power was just reducing a lot of complexity around power, because the base level thing with the dragging and the current way of power is it's just it's not really, it always has felt more complicated than it needs to be. And I do like ships just having more hard points than other ships. Because it's a very intuitive thing to say this ship is bigger than that ship. It can have more things.
So let's zoom out for a moment. So things that I think we align on broadly is having power act more as just a simplified gate, in a way that sort of we like that it reduces complexity. You're not microing, turning things on and off. We generally like that direction, and I think that we like some of the ideas around different fuels being a way to specialize engines on a long-term upgrade path of like it's interesting to potentially choose out what you're consuming or what you're doing as a way to change and upgrade your engine. We're worried about losing differentiation of ships through hardpoints as far as size of ships and just differentiation of types of ships, but simplifying the hardpoint system as part of this seems like something we can do, and there are concerns around the hardpoint system in general. And so what we want to do is sort of take those things that we like and are thinking about and modify what we're talking about from this sort of stuff into that. So like as an example from the doc that I wrote, probably dropping out the two of the three pieces of the reactor. So we don't care about structure, we don't care about containment. But the fuel is an interesting vector to think about. I think simplifying power, so we're not drag and dropping and turning things on and off, is a thing we want to go down. But then we want to find a way where we can maintain hardpoint differentiation, but also simplify how we're limited on hardpoints and sort of how upgrading power lets us build more stuff, right? And so it's worth sort of like, I think, starting from that point and applying our design brains towards how we want to build from there. Is that a reasonable summation of where we're at so far?
Yeah.
Captures my feels.
Cool.
I know. It may be kicking the can down the road, but I almost feel like maybe we should just solve the immediate player pain by making it super simple gate that we talked about. Remove like, just make it flat hard points, or just have an upgrading reactor that scales by increasing the number of hard points that you have, and then just see how the resource changes pan out.
I mean, the easiest MVP change is to just be like, it is just a gate, and ships just still have their hard points.
The gotcha on that is we need to make sure the random ship generation respects it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably worthwhile as a follow-up to this to potentially have some of us. I'm thinking me and Brandon, just because I know we were on the some of the world IP stuff, but just thinking about like, okay, how are we sort of doing ship types and ship specializations, and just thinking about if we want to revisit that as far as like, is it hardpoints, like is it reactors? Because I think Brandon had some good ideas as far as like different ships give you prompts towards different fuels and sort of ideas, sort of like helps the learning process on that. So maybe some follow-up design work there that we can have another design time while we implement the MVP of like, let's just simplify this power down and start to see how it feels and then build up from there.
Agreed. That sounds great.
Cool. So we should probably make the work task to simplify down the power stuff so that we capture that and can start working on it. And then figure out some ownership. I don't mind taking some of the ownership of driving forward on the ship differentiation, hardpoint fuel problem, and roping in probably Brandon and Ant as time allows. Not that I want to exclude George, but
It's fine.
I do most of my design work in late afternoon, so
It's totally fine. Just keep me in the loop.
yeah.
So the design work you want it ships specialization, ship types.
Yeah, I want to visit ship specialization and types and how it relates to our new power and hard points.
So I'm going to put in an implementation task in the backlog for power.
Yeah, that would
Do we
actually
want
that's probably coming into this
do we,
release.
do we want to put it into this release?
That was my goal from some of this stuff. Was this would generate work that we were doing this release, and we should size
Can I
it.
champion it?
Sure. And I'm putting ship types and specializations design ideation, Carl, as a task. As a card.
Yes.
Whether you're championing that.
Yes. Does that feel like it lines up with the right set of work coming out of this?
Yes, those are the two things, and then we can build from there.
Cool.
Labels.
We're doing this in release 8. There we go. Labels. Well, does anyone else want to be on
I'll
the new
join
power?
you,
Thank
just
you.
so that I can validate it as it's going.
I'm gonna put the drag and drop back into
Yeah.
release 8 and not work on it. That was
I
on
don't
my
think,
task.
I don't think so. I even had another thing. I'm like, even if we want to keep power consumption thing, there's probably a better way than drag and drop to handle this stuff.
Yeah. So so I think that's the right thing is deprioritize it for now. Let's see how the base power implementation before we nuke the card completely, but put it into release 8 for now.
All right.
Excuse me.
Design.
Good job,
so
Will.
we've
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Well, this is the politest design time we've ever had. There's no sass or sauce anywhere.
Oh, there's been sass all over.
It's true.
No.
Wait, but he was being sarcastic.
Oh, he was. See,
No,
that
I
was
was
sass.
totally serious. I was totally fucking serious, Will. I would never sass you or sarcasm ever.
See, there's a lot of chili pepper in that sauce.
Damn. I want some
It's getting
shit.
spicy in here. Give me some mayo to cool off.
I had, by the
Gross.
way, I had turkey schnitzel today.
Oh my
It's
god.
pretty good.
That sounds sehr gut.
I was hanging out with somebody who I had met from this area at one of the bars, and I said we should go to what is traditional Austrian food. And he's like, I'm from Venezuela. So it was pretty funny. So we just walked around until we found a more traditional. He speaks German fluently though, so I mean he's been here for a couple of years. But we found schnitzel place that has non-red meat schnitzel because I don't eat red meat, and the turkey schnitzel was really good. It was super good.
That sounds so
And then
good.
the potato salad and like they have a weird kind of coleslaw. It's not actually coleslaw. It's more like a salad that has coleslaw-like elements in it. It's pretty cool. I liked it. I thought it was delicious, and it was baked by like an authentic Austrian grandma or something.
That's
Should we do another design time?
We can. So I'm good to go for another one if you guys want to. I have time tonight that I was intending on working anyway, and I woke up really late today because I was out really late last night. So
I will need to
I'm
bounce in about 15 minutes, but I'm also happy to have you guys go without me. So the only challenge is I will need to cut recording whenever I bounce.
okay, out of these things, Carl, tell me if there's any that you don't want us to do because you really want to be part of them. Let's see, action panel discussion. Where's the next one? Galaxy generation.
I really want to be part of Galaxy Generation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And where's the last one? I know
We
there's
have all
one
the
more.
we have faction stuff,
Oh, faction
Yeah,
stuff.
we do have faction stuff.
which I think is probably. I assume, Carl, you want to be also more involved in that.
Eh,
Or do you care?
eh.
Okay.
No, I mean, I'm more fine with that stuff going forward. Like, I think what I will care least about is the conversation around action panel stuff, because I think that's a pretty tactical thing for you guys to figure out. I will be involved in whatever the UI UX ends up being that we need to go and implement, but
Sure.
I care less as a designer.
All right, then let's do that.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. All right, go away, Carl. Just kidding.
I mean, actually, what's probably best is if I cut the stream here and someone else picks up recording if we want to record this.
Yes.
Oh, that's a good point.
If I'm being honest, I feel like this is kind of a less exciting, slightly more boring topic. So if we don't want to record it, I don't think we're losing that much. But if we do want to record it, I'm also okay with that. What do you guys think?
Agreed.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of content. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
like backlogged in terms of videos.
Okay.
Cool. Well, I know that we've had some people watching our design time, so thanks for hanging out with us, and hopefully it was vaguely interesting to watch a bunch of game designers argue with themselves
Rah!
and have a spicy conversation. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow.
And buy our game. It's great.
Yes, buy our game. It's great. Bye, guys.
Just subscribe to Patreon because we make more money from that.